have been restored.
Yeah.
What means restored? Restored means you take the old negative, so the negative is in a box in different cans from reel 1 to 5. If the film is a Bollywood movie, it's until reel 10. So you have 10 cans of films, and these 10 cans, they have around 150 to 300,000 single images. So we can make the mathematics again. A camera shoots 24 frames per second. That you multiply by 60 to have a minute, and you multiply it by the duration of the movie, the minutes, and you come up to 150,000 or 300,000 frames. Why do I count the number of frames? Because if you restore a movie, you need to make a scan or a photo. You know, a scan, like a scanner, as you know it. It's just made, these scanners are made for movies. They take them, you put the negative on the scanner, and they have reels, so it's image by image are photographed, video photographed, scanned. Are scanned, they are transferred from analog image to digital data. I mean, you have the apps now. On iPhone, they tell you, oh, you can take a picture of your old diapositive, and that's already a scan of one image. But what makes film restoration so difficult is, first, what I mentioned, film disappears. So the quality of the negatives may be good if it was a film which was shot 1980, 1990, 2000. But if the film is older, if the film was shot 1920, 1930, 1940, the negative will not look as good anymore. It might even have lost information, lost the perforation. The perforation are the holes where you transport the film. You know, as you record 24 frames and you project 24 frames, there are all these pins taking the film, pulling it down, holding it still for a 50th of a second, another 50th of a second. It pulls down the film, it opens, it projects, or it shoots, and that was the analog film technology. And those sprockets also sometimes they go away.
Yeah.
And we talked also, this is the image, and then we have the sound. And the sound sometimes is also a very big problem. The sound negative was kept separately. It was usually a black and white negative. It was very thin information, lines, which the sound, as I'm talking now, music, whatever, was transferred into white and black information, which was copied along the frame. So if you talk, the film which was invented, there's something amazing, what I love about analog film. It was invented, it was 35 millimeters. Somebody, I don't know, it was George Eastman, whoever, Lumiere, who said, let's do the film, the width 35 millimeter, and the height for sprockets. And that was invented 1895. And that is what it was used until the very end, until now. If people like Quentin Tarantino is shooting a movie, he still does it to the old formula. Nothing has changed. And that was the magic also. You could take a film print from any country to the world to another, and you could just project it. Except there was a language problem, and you had to dub films, you had to subtitle them. That's another topic. But cinema was a very universal, analog cinema was a very universal technology. And that is not the same with digital film. Digital film exists in thousands different codecs. It exists in different frame rates. We have problems to converse it. And every year there comes a new technology. We started with 2K. Now 4K is the new standard. We'll go up to 8K. So actually there will be a problem in 10, 20 years to restore and to save the old digital files, because they also have to be copied. But the good thing is about digital is it doesn't fade. It's just information which you have to store on a USB stick. I mean, if I mentioned before, oh, I had to transport 25 kilograms of a film print. If I go now, if you see a movie here, any movie here, you could, a digital, the print now, the cinema print is called now Digital Cinema Package, DCP. And it's a file in between 140, 120, and if it's a long movie, let's say 280 gigabyte. So it's nothing. You can put that data on a USB stick, and I can send it by DHL like a document, or I uploaded it. I can upload it I can do various things. That's amazing. I mean, there's something which is really amazing about. So you just need to have every filmmaker. That's what you have. You have a digital image technician now on the set, and whenever you shoot something, you immediately make 3 copies of it, and you make sure these 3 copies, they are not stored in one house. You know, 1 copy goes to the cameraman, to a lab, the digital image. So if in one house there's a fire or a thief comes to steal the hard disk, you know, you still have 2 copies. You know, and if one breaks, you still have 1. You know, but that's something when we even don't trust the digital anymore. That's very funny. Nowadays, when we shoot digital, sometimes we make analog prints of it. I mean, Hollywood does it. Yeah. I don't know if that... In Germany, we don't do it. It's very expensive. But they sometimes print again on analog because the digital, I mean, it's like, you know, if there's atomic war, whatever, and digital, I mean, the only thing we make jokes is like if you... which will last forever, if you take a hammer and you put the information in a stone, you know, and lots of zeros and ones, you could put a movie, so it will live eternally. And there might be, you know, it's like like looking back, if you don't know, I don't know, your grandparents, they had photos, and they still exist. We shoot this, they didn't do a lot of photos, but they're still there. And we shoot these million photos now with our iPhones. And how many we keep? You know, we lose our iPhones. We forgot to make a backup. Nobody watches this stuff anymore. I mean, you make...
And it's a really valid point what and just to give an analogy, you know, I don't know how many of you have seen floppy disks. You know, there were these floppy disks, and in current days computers, you won't get even floppy drives. So suppose if you have data stored in floppy disk, what do you do about it? And now, how this entire technology has transitioned so fast. So from floppy disk to CDs to DVDs, pen drives, hard disks, and I don't know what is going to come next.
I mean, there's one medium we forgot. For long storage backup, we use LTO tapes.
LTO tapes, yeah.
LTO tapes is because we don't trust these hard disks. Hard disks, you all know, sometimes they stop working. So actually, we record our data back on tape. Yeah. And we're using a data format which was invented by banks and insurances to keep just lots of millions of data. It's a tape. And every 2 years, there's a new generation. So if I copy now, I think we're on generation 8 or 9. Yeah. Maybe in 5 years, the machines are not anymore able to play it. So you need to keep the old players and the old recorders alive.
So if you have a huge data, you would have to spend much more as a production house, you know, to kind of at least make that digital storage, you know, reliable. But coming back to the restoration part, you know, in terms of the challenges, you know, you mentioned about the negatives. What is the kind of best source material in terms of the, you know, restoration? Suppose if a particular film is to be restored, what kind of you know, steps you know, to be followed, particularly about the source material? What is the better one?
I mean, when we shot on film, we shot on a negative, and that negative was edited and printed. And if you were doing commercial films and you knew you would do more than 50 prints, then you would do an intermediate. You would not print 50 prints. I mean, what means printing at that time? You know, sorry. So you had this camera negative, and that camera negative you shot 20,000, 40,000, 60,000 meters. It was half a container for the movie. And then you would make positive prints. You would print all that stuff on another film stock, and so finally you had a positive you could watch. That was edited with edge numbers. I mean, this is funny, you know. So the editor would just make an art cut. He would make the cut as we understand editing, the best shots together. But then there would come a technician and would analyze the positive, the edited print, and would cut the negative, but not like an artist. Just at the edge numbers. He would find all in this half container by the edge numbers, the real, and to make the negative cut. And that was holy. Now I'm coming really from masters of film material to the final negative cut. And that negative is unique. I mean, this is not any more fear, as I told you, we have nowadays, because we have 3 hard disks somewhere. But when we shot on film, we had 1 negative. You cannot believe what a can of negative from a scene with your film star, you know, who's gone to cut his hair and is on another film shoot, and you still haven't done your negative cut. You know, how fearful you were, and what responsibility that was there in the lab. And then they called you and said, oh, we had a problem, and 1 reel was broken. And you were crying, you know. So, given the film was finished and the negative was there, they printed their 50 prints, or they made even the interpositive and the internegative, because once you put the negative to print, print was really to have, you had the negative in the machine, and you had a positive, which was again a raw stock, which needed to be exposed by a light. That was printing. So 2 film stocks touching each other were transported through a machine, and light was going through, and from the negative you would have the film print, the final copy which went to a cinema. You made 1, you made 2, you made 3, and if you had a Shah Rukh Khan, you made 5,000, and then the negative would be destroyed. So after 50 prints, you would stop. This was your premiere prints for the festivals, for the best theaters. And then you would do interpositive, and then you would make another negative, and then you would have the prints, the mass prints, as we called them, the mass prints. They would already have not the best quality anymore, because the negative was the best. And that's the downside of analog filmmaking. That's really downside, because nothing looks as good as the original negative or the first print. From the first print, already a little scratch comes here, a little spot comes there. You make a second print, and the more prints you make, and then you send that print to the cinema, and they run it once. It's looking great. They run it twice. You know, they have to put the reels together, because you couldn't transport 1 reel. 1 reel, 2,500 meters, would have been this size. It's impossible. It couldn't go on trucks. So they cut the film actually in 5 reels, or a long film. They would cut in 10 rolls. And then they would send this from in the big cities, in the small cities, in the villages, and they always would put the film together and cut it again after the projection. And so the film gradually would lose 1 frame here, 1 frame there. There would be an old projector, there would be a scratch, and the prints every week would fade. That's why you also destroyed them. You know, and sometimes they would do another print after 10 years because the film director was famous, or he would do a director's cut, whatever. So I want the negative. So answering, sorry, just I want the negative. If I restore the movie, I want the negative. You know, and now you know more about it. Some negatives have disappeared. Why? Can you explain me why some negatives have disappeared?
What the entire procedure you were explaining about the, taking print from the, original negative, what happened mostly in India was that, number one, as you are aware, there is 2 different stocks, both for picture and sound. So there are 2 different negatives. And what has happened in India particularly is that the stock which was used for the sound was of inferior quality. So there is already the kind of degeneration has started right from the start, number one. Number two, the practice in India was that, once the original negative was made, the kind of the guiding mantra is that you don't touch that, to kind of next the all other formalities to be done. But in India, they always use the original camera negative to carry out the prints. So there was no intermediate, or you can say master positive or something like that. And because of that, lot of negatives were kind of destroyed. Number one. Number two, what you said about the quality of the film. Film is a chemical material, so it will degenerate. And talking about India, we are in such a climatic zone which is hot, and that's why there were no proper storage facilities. The labs also were not in an ideal conditions to store them, and as happens, the producer had no stake to preserve the film. So just to give the perspective, in kind of a how it happened in India. The first film, first feature film was made in 1913, whereas the National Film Archive was established in 1964. So you can imagine 50 years kind of passed for us to think that there has to be a particular systematic organization to preserve the film. So there are variety of reasons because of which the negatives have been lost. And that's why the difficulty in restoration, because if there is no negative original camera negative available, what you do? So then you go to the next generation. If there is a master positive or at the last there is a release positive print, and that is not the ideal way to restore the film, because as he rightly pointed out, the information has lost because of this entire process. And that's the challenge, particularly in India, in terms of restoring films. But I would also come to another issue in terms of the ethical point of view. Now, because the digital technology is available, there are so many tools in the hands of technicians when you kind of restore a film. Whereas a particular film, it could be made in 1950s or 1960s, that filmmaker has made that film with the available technology. Whatever was available, whatever resources was available, he kind of made maximum use of that, and then he made that film. But because now the technology is available, because there are technological tools available to improve upon the original, what is the ethical kind of challenges or questions comes in terms of restoring the film?
To correct things on analog film was very difficult. The analog film, you had just 3 parameters. It was like red, yellow, green. And those 3 colors you could adjust when you were printing. So you had the negative, and there was 3 lights, and during the printing, the machine changed all the time. With every cut, it changed the color according to the cameraman's desire to make the film look good. Because something was darker, something was too blue, then there was a light wrong. So he adjusted with RGB what he could do, what he could correct. Maybe the director wanted one scene to happen in the evening, so he made everything darker, he put all the lights down, or he said, oh, what we shot in the early morning should look like daylight. So that was all the tools we had. It was nothing. And that's why we had this intermediate step. When digital came, then we wanted all already play with this amazing stuff which you all have on your phone nowadays. I mean, it's crazy. We can do effects nowadays for nothing, for peanuts, which would have cost millions, billions. The digital world has tools like Photoshop, like Adobe, like there's things you can do. You paint away stuff. Okay, just simple, like there was a microphone in the frame, and there are old films where you sometimes see a microphone in the frame. Now, that's the question. Maybe at that time there was no other take where there was no microphone, so they used, maybe you can find that in old films. Maybe they were hoping the projectionist would, cut away a little bit. Or there's other things. Maybe the camera had a mistake and something was shaking. Or there was a scratch. Now, in old films there are mistakes, and that makes them charming, as you say. But the filmmaker for sure did not intend to have those mistakes in his films. So now I tend to say, if the filmmaker is still alive, or let's say the cameraman, and he would say, thanks God that this film is restored now, finally I can take out that boom, that microphone, then I would say he's entitled to do that, because it was the original intention, and it was maybe really disturbing for them. But I think the moment the director is not alive anymore, and the director of photography is not alive anymore, and nobody can do that decision on someone else's behalf. So from that moment, the film, the analog film, as it still hopefully exists beside the negative, that you hopefully still, because I want to make the digitalization from the negative, but I need one print to look, what did they do with the colors? Sometimes even a video copy is not bad. It's not the good resolution, but as a viewing reference, it keeps the color better than a film print, which sometimes after 30 years changes totally the colors, which was the case on the film I'm presenting here, called Bratan by Bakhtiar Nazarov. It was shot in black and white, and we finally found out he printed all the copies on a color stock to give the film a little sepia touch. But we only found that out during the restoration process because all the positive prints, the cinema prints, were totally red. So that happens. This is the evil thing about the analog film. It's not only having like little problems. The colors, they're sometimes not screenable anymore. They deteriorate totally. So there is a need for restoring the film, and sometimes you have to guess. If there's no, I mean, the positive prints, they fade. You have the negative. You have maybe some photos. You have a video. But there comes the moment you are sitting in front of now it's a computer screen. You do the color correction with Da Vinci, with the software Baselight. And then you have much more buttons. You can correct problems. And yes, we do it under how did the original film look like? You know, it's sometimes hard because you think, oh my God, here it's something shaking, or here's something dirt. Let's remove it. But no, you shouldn't.
So that's a point of debate which is always there, because all said and done, restoration is a subjective process. There is always this question about how much to restore, and though the basic premise behind the restoration is, you go as close possible to the original, and that's the basic kind of premise. But there is this, I would say, a kind of a disturbing kind of trend where you colorize the film. If the original film is in black and white, just for the to showcase it to the present audience, you colorize it and present. What do you think about such an idea?
That's horrible. I mean, that's, films like Some Like It Hot, for instance, by Billy Wilder, has been shot intentionally to be black and white. When he shot the film, I think it was 1958, there was already color film. I mean, to now apply color to a film which was originally black and white, this is really like rape, I would say, artistic rape.
So that there are some examples in India, and that's the kind of question which we kind of encounter now and often. But in terms of the finances involved, because all said and done, restoration is a very costly process, by the way, because as Veit rightly described, it's a frame by frame restoration, and you need resources to kind of a team of proper well trained restorers who work on for endless days, and it's a very costly kind of affair. So do you like to comment on the entire economics behind the restoration?
Yeah, I mean, I think the minimum would be like 10. I mean, I'm talking now euro dollar. Sorry, I cannot transfer it so fast in rupees. I think the cheapest restoration would cost like $10,000, 10,000 euro. It's now we are equal dollar and euro. That's like maybe 4,000 for the scanning, and then you have costs for the retouching, we say, so to put out those mistakes which were not from the negative, which were from the fading of time, which were dirt coming later. So that's the manpower, people sitting, painting, correcting, and then you have the delivery. That means you have to put out the film again on a, not again, but now you have to make copies on the digital format. And the digital format now they call digital cinema package, which is also not that bad. It's already a format we have now for 15 years maybe. And it's also a worldwide format. It's a data format, just a container. I think it contains small TIFF or JPEGs from the film, and then they have some copy protection system, keys, which are applied to this DCP. So if a festival gets this data, they only can open it at certain times in certain cinemas, so it's against piracy. There's a lot of things against piracy. You know, that was the fear. That's maybe also delayed the introduction of digital cinema, that the distributors were really scared because, yeah, if the file is open, you just put it on a computer and in 2 minutes you have a pirated file. And yes, I mean, it increased, the piracy increased because there's now also many tools and there's many places where it's very vulnerable, the digital system, while the analog system was hard to pirate because it was big machines and big material. Now everything is data, and if you have someone who's a crook in the system, yeah, he might steal data. What was the question again? The money.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the minimum case. I think the maximum case we go, I mean, if there's classic old films being restored and there's different cinematheques involved and they send different prints and then they find out, oh my God, Metropolis exists in 5 different versions. It was in Italy, that's duration, then they find an old script, then they see photos here, they have 90% on a beautiful negative and 10% on a positive, then the amount of work or to decide what scene you take from where. Oh, there's a minute or 5 frames in good quality there, but do you want to have in a minute of bad quality to take 1 second of good quality? So there's so much think work. So such restoration can go up to 100,000, I would say. 200,000 maybe if it's like a Birth of a Nation of Griffiths or something. But I think the average, I mean, in Germany, I mean, so restorations are usually government funded. And the government, I don't know how much it is here, but the European figures are around 30, 40, 50,000, which the government would give according to the quality of the material. The assumed, because you cannot check the quality, then you already have done half of the process. So what you assume, you get the loan, and then you do the scanning, the retouching, blah, 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 what I said. You deliver the film, and sometimes you can reuse classic films commercially. That's something which is interesting now, why producers have more and more interest to actually go into their vaults, to check what's there, to trace. And as I understand, in India, it's 60 years, and then the producer loses the rights. That means it's like classic music. It's in the common copyright. Everybody can use it, can perform it, don't have to pay. So anybody who would find a negative which is more than 60 years old, you know, it's not anymore protected by the producer.
Yeah, and that's the entire kind of logical reasoning behind the government, putting money into the restoration project, because it's a very costly affair, and for some of you, I can add that the government of India is right now doing a massive, I would imagine one of the largest restoration projects in the world, and we are looking at something like 5,000 films, both feature and non-feature, to be digitized and restore in next 3 to 4 years, and that's a very massive kind of.
But then 6,000 films still remain not.
Yes, yeah. Exactly, and that's the question about which to select. You have to prioritize. You have to kind of make a list of films.
Tell me how you make the choice in India.
Yeah. So
is this the president who's doing the choice?
So what we kind of we did is that we carried out an elaborate consultation process across the stakeholders. We met, we went and met all the stakeholders. We in fact literally held the meetings in 8 cities where the industry is located. As you are aware, in India there are at least 8 to 9 major languages in which the films are made in substantial numbers. So we met and we kind of consulted, and there came about 8 to 9 parameters, on the basis of which you possibly can select a particular title for taking the restoration. Now, obviously, the oldest one would have the priority, particularly film from a silent era, because again, to put into perspective, India, when the film started in 1913 and the sound came in 1931, in those about 20 odd years, something like 1,500 films were made in silent era, and out of which only about 31 survived. So, and that's too into bits and pieces, not full length films. And out of that, last three have come in last about 4 years from Cinémathèque Française in Paris. So that's the kind of amount of loss we had in terms of India's cinematic heritage is concerned. So obviously the older one is the first choice. Then you have these entire awards, the national award winning films, the state award winning films, the films which have been part of the Indian panorama, because there is already some kind of a selection which has already kind of happened. Then we also have to kind of look at the regional kind of a balance, because as I said, there are 7 to 8 major languages in which cinema is made, so you have to kind of try to balance it out. And then there are some major directors who have kind of made a mark in the history of Indian cinema, and then you kind of try and take their entire filmography, so that from the cinema history point of view, you can possibly look at him as a filmmaker, how he has evolved. So there are 7 to 8 parameters on which we kind of decided that these are the factors on the basis of which we would select the film for restoration. And then what we did is that we applied something kind of a similar system for the jury system for the national award. So there are 2-tier systems. So one at the regional level, one at the national level. So we got the filmmakers who are renowned filmmakers. We got the film historians. We got the writers. We got the academicians to kind of decide on from the pool of films which are available. At the same time, we also ask them to recommend, if it is a not available film, in the process, if we can possibly find that film also, suppose if it is important. So that also exercise kind of we had. And out of that, we have kind of decided that these are about something like 5,000 titles to be taken up for the restoration. That's how the entire elaborate process we kind of carried out. And as we speak, we have got state-of-the-art ARRI scanners in our premises in Pune.
German scanners.
And they are sprocketless scanners. So, even if the film is damaged, they will take it up at a literally 2 frames per second, at that slow speed, so that you can capture the entire information available in that particular film. So it's a mammoth exercise, and I can tell you that we are screening one of the restored classics in this particular festival, which is Satyajit Ray's Pratidwandi, the adversary in this particular. I don't know when is the screening, but please do watch, because that's again another title which we took, because as you are aware, Ray's the known films have been restored by the Academy. So we thought that we will take it up the other films which are available, and that's how we kind of restored 9 of his later films, and some of these films have been now screened in Cannes, Venice, Berlin, Toronto, etc., in all the major festival. But on this note, I would want to ask you particular about this your personal experience when you restored this film. How you went about? Though you briefly mentioned that because of the color challenge, but what was your entire
the restoration of every movie there's an adventure behind it. And that's, you could do a making of the restoration,
Yes.
the research for the material, and then all those decisions. I mean, I'm presenting here the movie Bratan, which is the debut feature by Tajik director Bakhtiar Nazarov. It was the last film made in the Soviet Union. And Bakhtiar came to Berlin. He lived in Berlin for 25 years. He died, unfortunately, 5 years ago. We became close friends. And he never knew where the negative of his first film was, the debut feature. And he was doing, as you said, he was involved always in his new films. And when he died, I thought, I have a mission. And it was kind of to therapy for me. To restore his first film. First, to find the negative. It was not in the film archives. And only his sales agent, Crest from Switzerland, told me that that film actually was financed by the Soviet television. So we found the negative in the Russian television archive. This was the simple part. Then to negotiate a contract, because they said, who are you? And it's not 60-year-old, this film, so they said, we own the rights, but we are not interested to restore it. I said, I'm interested to restore it, I need the rights. So then they said, okay, you have to sign a contract, you have to pay some money. We negotiated over a year, and I actually paid money to buy the rights to distribute this movie. And once I had this contract in place, I gave them money to scan the film. I didn't want to do the restoration there, but the scanning was more easy to do in Moscow, so I didn't need to transport the negative, which I told you, transport film from one country to another. It's a very delicate thing. Yeah. Original negative sometimes will not leave an archive anymore. Mm-hmm. Now they're in an archive, they stay there, so it's more about having scanners in every archive. The scanner is not like a huge machine. That's like, but it costs 2 million. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know, maybe 1.5. I don't know. It's a very expensive machine, like an ARRI scanner. And so they did the scan for me. The material came to Berlin, the data. So from then on, the restoration process is a very digital process, but you want the reference. So the reference was a positive print, which was kept actually by the Berlin Film Festival, because the film was presented there, and Berlin did something really nice. I think it's still done by a couple of festivals like Venice. They don't, when you present the film there, they say, oh, give us the copy, please. You know, leave us one copy here. Yeah. So some festival like Venice or Berlin, they have a big archive. So that's the good thing nowadays, that when you restore a movie, that there are somewhere in the world. And you know, every year, every day, find somewhere something, because archives is a mess. I mean, the best kept archive still have something somewhere, and they find it while they open a can and they think, oh fuck, there's not the film they thought there is. You know, there was another reel in there. Yeah. But then they look at the reel, wow, it's the film we were looking for 2 years. So, you know, and then they go to that can and then they find maybe, you know, so because human errors. So this is the beauty in there, in the restoration process. And then,
Did you personally supervise the entire kind of grading and all this thing? Yeah.
So then we watched the old film print, and then we saw, oh yeah, what I explained earlier, it was red. So we needed to find the right. Yeah, I mean, sure, there was no one. There was no one left. So yeah, I did it. I hope I did it to the best extent. And you already mentioned, you know, now it's beautiful because the main festivals, they have classic sections now, and that something's really funny, because when I have a film, I have to decide, I have to decide which festival will do the premiere. Actually, it's the opposite way. The festival, I submit my film, like casting, you know, like actors come to me and they audition for me. When I've made a movie, then I audition for the festival. You know, I send my film to Cannes, to Berlin, to Venice, and I hope the best festival take my film. And the same, and then, you know, you can just have one premiere. If you have your, for the big festivals, if you had your premiere there, then it's like losing your virginity. You can just lose it once in a way, yeah? And now the festival require even premiere status for restorated movie. Yeah. So if you have shown a class, this Bratan I showed in Venice, I cannot show it again in Berlin or Cannes. Now I can show it in smaller festivals, which is still good. I mean, I'm happy that the film is selected in Kerala. It was shown in Lyon, in Sao Paulo, in Panama, and I hope it will make many festivals, because I think for the audience, all this premiere status is silly. You know, people don't travel all the time everywhere.
But there is this, obviously there is this audience for these restored classics, isn't it?
Yeah, and there are now new channels for that. I mean, there are channels dedicated for classic movies like Criterion. Yeah. I don't know if you have a special channel here, but Criterion is an amazing channel which shows this film. And there's potential audience, yes, not only cinephiles. I mean, it comes from various directions why suddenly people are interested because they are interested for a country, for music, for something. Yeah. I mean, once a film is digitized, it's very easy then to distribute it on a technical level, because again, you just upload the file somewhere. Somebody buys the license, now we're coming into film trade, and you can distribute a movie, a restored movie, like you can distribute a new movie.
So that's the beauty of restoration, because it gives access to newer audience, because there are so many queries. When I was in the archive, there were so many queries whether you have this film, whether it can be watched, and all those things. And archive, you have a huge kind of a database of films on analog, but you can watch it only in particular theater, because there is no it is not been digitized. So access point of view, yes, it is very beautiful for the audience purpose, but at the same time, analog is analog, and that's what we are doing in this particular project is that though it's a costly affair, we are bringing back the restored film on analog. It's an internegative, and because we feel that film on film is if you keep it in a right condition, it will. As of now, the study shows that more than 150, 200 years. So, and this entire debate about digital is still going on. If some of you are interested in this particular subject, there is a very beautiful study which was commissioned by the Academy, and they came out with this 2-part publication which is available on their website, and the title of that entire research study is Digital Dilemma. Because it's still dilemma. There are no permanent universal answers to the digital question. There are migration challenges, there are financial challenges, and suppose, as you mentioned, there is 4K now, 8K is coming.
I have my doubts about... I tell you why. I mean, I look up here and I see a digital projector. There is no... I mean, thousands of analog projectors have been discarded. Yeah. I mean, a projector which 20 years ago costed $100,000, 3 years later, you had to pay for someone taking it to the garbage, So they don't exist. And I mean, how many cinemas you have, how many screens you have in India?
Say about 7,000 to 8,000.
7,000 to 8,000? Yeah. How many would have an analog projector?
Less than maybe 100.
Less than 100. And the problem is, those 100 cinemas, their staff don't have any more the knowledge to operate the projectors. And the next problem is, a projector is not like a computer, you turn it on and off. A projector needs to run frequently it's like an engine in a car. It needs all the fluids to run properly, and you couldn't just, after a year, there was no film print being shown, you just couldn't come with a print just being preserved, costly. I mean, a print usually was 3,000 to 4,000 euro. I don't know nowadays if it might be more even. Yeah.
Still, Kodak stop is still available for the archival purpose. So you can. So what I'm talking about is not all films, but actually very few films which are, from the cinema history point of view, are very valuable. I think you should bring it back, to even after the restoration, so that it can be preserved. Because I'm talking purely from the preservation point of view. So that
beautiful.
even if it is expensive, it's beautiful because film on film, all said and done, will stay longer than the digital one. On this note, I think
the project, no, but
Yeah.
before, the projectionists were used to be like the lowest rank in the film industry, And nowadays, if you find one person who knows how to run a film projector, they fly him by plane from one city to another one for a festival to put that old Murnau print into the projector.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great, but I think it will just be possible for a handful of cinemas, cinematheques, museums, and then people really should also have the chance to go to see the projector.
Yes.
We have one cinema in Germany, they put the projector into the room now. I mean, it's noisy, a film projector makes noise, but people love finally to see that. It's like an old dinosaur, coming to life again.
Yeah. So I think
On that note,
thank you so much. On this note, we stop here, and thank you so much for sharing your insights on the restoration, and thank you IFFK for giving us this opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks to Veit Helmer and Prakash Magdum for the session. Audience, we are about to begin the question answer session. You may raise your questions, please.
Sir, the Veit Helmer, what is the problem with the trouble with India is that we are in a tropical sphere. So the lot of degeneration happens here from for the analog. So what we urgently need is a sort of Noah's Ark, a digital Noah's Ark, like from the flood in Bible there is a Noah's Ark to save all extinct species. So likewise on that lines there should be a digital Noah's Ark to save all analog flooding from save cinema from the analog flood. We have to urgently need of a digital Noah's Ark. My question to you is regarding what are the climatic conditions you encounter in Germany to preserve, unlike in India. In India it is tropical. What about Germany?
It's much less humid, but I think that the laboratories where we store the negatives, they were climate zones of their own.
Okay.
So like in museums, they would control the humidity in that vaults, and also the temperature. There was for each film stock, Kodak and Fuji, they advised the storage temperature. And storage was expensive. That was one reason why producers sometimes hesitated to store all materials. I mean, because you could say, if a film print was broken, we just go to take another cut. But no, nobody would save all shot stuff. Once the film was cutted and was printed once, that stuff already was destroyed and damaged, because each can, you had to pay a monthly, or you still have if you do it, you pay per can per month in those, it's like in a trésor of a bank. So I guess that the best vaults in India also are climatized in Pune, yeah?
Yeah, you would be surprised to know that at the archive we charge no rental. So if you are a producer, you can come and happily deposit your film. And just to kind of answer the question, yeah, you are absolutely right. For the preservation point of view, there are two different set of temperature guidelines, so for black and white as well as color, and different set of humidity control also. Yeah.
I mean, what I would advise every government is, as I mentioned, the first step, like what you would say, Arkenoa, like just to digitize it. It's not a very expensive one. So take the money you have, scan all the 12,000 movies which need to be scanned. It would just be a fraction of the money you need, and then one by one take all the expensive, and scan really from what is damaged most, what is disappearing most, what is really like dissolves. I don't have the technical terms in English, I'm so sorry, but really film stock loses so much.
Sir, you likened the restoration of films to saving a dinosaur from its DNA. DNA, the Jurassic Park, there is a dinosaur retrieval system from its DNA. Likewise, the restoration of a past classic involves exorbitant sums of money. That is what you mean?
I mean, in the old film cans there was vinegar. The film through contact with air, and then the old first nitro films, you cannot handle it simply because it was burning. I think until 1930, you know what year they used nitro film? Until the 40s, they used nitrate material, which if you would put a lighter, it would explode. So that's why cinemas really in the first 50 years was a dangerous place, because each box of film was like a bomb. And only when they invented celluloid and acetate, the film material, it became less dangerous. But now if you use those old, you really have to be super careful. Yeah, it's like explosive.
You know, I'm also a filmmaker, like basically an editor.
Hold it closer to your mouth.
Huh?
Hold the microphone closer to your mouth.
Okay. I just did you know, in olden days they used telesign technologies for cutting like a film stock which is scanned into a telesign and edit it in a way of that process. Nowadays, they shoot in 35mm film, even if a Kodak stock or something like that, and they just the negatives are cultured and digitized as a DPX files. Is there film restoration, like the government can be use this DPX file to be a storage facility? Actually, that container, I think one DPX, like each frames, you know. Is there any if film restoration be a part of this storage device?
Do you understand the question?
Though I didn't understand what he was saying much, but you know, there are two types of restoration as well. You know, in the olden days there was this photochemical restoration. You know, what was happened on the analog part of it. And what we generally were talking about was the digital restoration, where after the scanning is over, then you kind of use the digital tools available to kind of delete the scratches, the other impurities which has kind of over the years because of the handling and wear and tear which has kind of come into the film stock. And that you kind of use there are softwares available now to kind of remove those tools, and what ultimately results in is a kind of a digital product, and which kind of goes into a digital cinema package, what is called DCP. So that's what two different things. In the photochemical restoration is also there, where if you have a multiple sources of a film, then what you can do, suppose particularly if a film has 10 sources, then you can possibly take best reel from each of them, and then you try to kind of make a restoration before actually going for the scanning, so that you have the best possible source material for the scanning as well. Thank you.
Did you answer your question?
The question is actually we have this archives, like the footage, the stock, like 35mm film, and it's scanned into negatives, and we get the negative to the digital files as...
No, it's not, you don't scan it to negative, you scan it to a file.
File, like I think they would scan to a digital file in nowadays, that scan to a DPX files, like there are images, DPX images, even there are so many frames, and these files can be a storage for, even if the film stocks are destroyed, we can use this DPX as a storage device. Is there
like a TIFF? That's what I just suggested. You just scan it, and then whenever you have the resources, you start the restoration process. The scanning is the first step, let's say.
So that's what we are also doing in this particular project. So suppose there is no budget for restoration, you scan it and keep it, and then whenever the money is available, you go for the restoration. So at least scan it, for that, so that it can be saved and is available on digital material. Yeah.
Government of Kerala ഇതിന്റെ ഈ പ്രൊജക്റ്റിൽ റീസ്റ്റോറേഷൻ പ്രൊജക്റ്റിലാണ് ഇപ്പോൾ ഉള്ളത്. മുഴുവൻ സിനിമകളും സർ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ നമ്മൾ ആദ്യത്തെ സ്റ്റേജ് സ്കാൻ ചെയ്തെടുക്കുകയാണ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. 2 സ്റ്റേജിലൂടെയാണ് റീസ്റ്റോറേഷൻ പോകുന്നത്. ഒന്ന് മൊത്തം സിനിമകളും സ്കാൻ ചെയ്യുക. ഈ സ്കാനിങ് കംപ്ലീറ്റ് ചെയ്തതിന് ശേഷം പിന്നെയാണ് മാനുവൽ റീസ്റ്റോർ, പിക്ചർ ആൻഡ് സൗണ്ട്, ഡിജിറ്റൽ ഇന്റർമീഡിയറ്റ് കളർ കറക്ഷൻ സെക്കൻഡ് സ്റ്റേജിലാണ് നടക്കുന്നത്. ഫസ്റ്റ് ഫേസിൽ മുഴുവൻ സിനിമയും സ്കാൻ ചെയ്ത് ഇതിനെ DPX ഫോർമാറ്റിലേക്ക് മാറ്റും. ഈ DPX ഫോർമാറ്റ് LTO 8 ടാപ്പുകളിലാണ് നമ്മൾ സൂക്ഷിക്കുന്നത്. ഇത് മൾട്ടിമീഡിയ കണ്ടന്റ് അല്ല, ഡാറ്റയാണ്. ഈ ഡാറ്റ നമുക്ക് ആവശ്യമുള്ള സമയത്ത് നമ്മൾ ഡിജിറ്റൽ സിനിമ പാക്കേജ് എന്നുള്ള മൾട്ടിമീഡിയ കണ്ടന്റിലേക്ക് മാറ്റി എന്നിട്ട് ഇത്തരം പ്രൊജക്ടറുകളിലേക്ക് നമ്മൾ പ്രൊജക്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ നമ്മൾ ലോഡ് ചെയ്ത് പ്രൊജക്ട് ചെയ്യാണ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ നമ്മൾ ഫസ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് ഓൾ സ്കാനിങ് കംപ്ലീറ്റ് ചെയ്തതിന് ശേഷം ഇതെല്ലാം നമ്മൾ DPX ഫോർമാറ്റിൽ LTO ടാപ്പിലായിട്ടാണ് സൂക്ഷിക്കുന്നത്. ഗവൺമെന്റ് ഇപ്പൊ ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. അതിനുശേഷം ആവശ്യമുള്ള സമയത്ത് ഈ ടാപ്പിൽ നിന്ന് നമ്മൾ സിനിമ പാക്കേജ് ആയിട്ട് DCP ആയിട്ട് നമ്മൾ കൺവേർട്ട് ചെയ്തെടുത്ത് നമ്മൾ ആവശ്യമുള്ളതിനനുസരിച്ച് പ്ലേ ചെയ്യും. വേറെ എങ്ങോട്ടേലും അയക്കുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഇതിന്റെ പൈറസിയെ അടിസ്ഥാനമാക്കി നമ്മൾ എന്ത് ചെയ്യും, ഇതിനെ എൻക്രിപ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യും. ആ എൻക്രിപ്റ്റ് ചെയ്ത് ഒരു കീ ഡെലിവറി മെസ്സേജ്, ഒരു KDM ഇതിന് ആഡ് ചെയ്ത് കൊടുക്കും. ഈ KDMഉം ഈ സിനിമയും നമ്മൾ എങ്ങോട്ടാണോ അയക്കേണ്ടത്, ഫെസ്റ്റിവലിലേക്ക് അയക്കേണ്ടതുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അങ്ങോട്ട് അയച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഏത് പ്രൊജക്ടറിലാണോ ഇത് പ്രൊജക്ട് ചെയ്യേണ്ടത് അതിന്റെ സെർവർ സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റ് ഉപയോഗിച്ചിട്ടാണ് സിനിമ നമ്മൾ എൻക്രിപ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുക. ഈ സെർവർ സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റിന്റെ ഈ എൻക്രിപ്റ്റ് ചെയ്ത ഈ കോഡും സിനിമയും നമ്മൾ അങ്ങോട്ട് അയച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഏത് ലോകത്തിന്റെ എവിടെ വേണമെങ്കിലും സിനിമ പ്ലേ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും. ആ സിനിമ നഷ്ടപ്പെടുമെന്നൊരു പേടി നമുക്ക് വേണ്ട. ഈ കീ ഡെലിവറി മെസ്സേജ് എന്നുള്ള ഈ ചെറിയ എൻക്രിപ്ഷൻ മെസ്സേജ് ഒരു പർട്ടിക്കുലർ പീരീഡിലേക്ക് മാത്രമേ ഉപയോഗിക്കാൻ കഴിയുള്ളൂ. LTO 8 സൂക്ഷിക്കേണ്ടത്, DPX ഫോർമാറ്റിൽ. ആവശ്യമുള്ള സമയത്ത് നമ്മളത് DCP ആക്കിയിട്ട് കൺവേർട്ട് ചെയ്യും.
Thank you. I'm serving the jury of the international competition, and in 8 minutes I have to be at the Arias Cinema. So I'm running now. There's just one thing, I'm presenting also one movie, my last movie, The Bra, and it was shot digitally, and I love analog film. And I did something in The Bra. If you want to see it, please go to see it. I think it's also playing tomorrow. I put film mistakes onto the digital file. So whoever watched the movie thinks it was shot analog, which is a complete lie. It's a little bit shaking, it has all these effects, and it was presented at many festivals by programmers saying, oh, this was a film shot on film. And I'll keep them thinking it was shot on film, but actually it was a lie. Don't tell anybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That marks the end of our question answer session. Now, I would like to invite the eminent filmmaker, Sri Adur Gopalakrishnan, to release the book, Mahatma on Celluloid, authored by Prakash Magdum and published by HarperCollins. Our guest, that is Veit Helmer, has left for the screening. So I extend my welcome to Sri Adur Gopalakrishnan, sir.